Alright, so here's the vac form canopy I've cut out, and I've cut out all of those pieces for the frames, and I'm test fitting them. And you can see that the pieces that go around flat like that for the rear gunner, those are a good place to start, sort of, because those are a place where they lock in place. It's a positive spot to start. So I figured I'd start back there compared to going towards the front. Now remember, this canopy has been coated with future floor wax to clear it up and everything. Now I very carefully add some of my glue all around the edges. Now the key here is, well, not to add too much, of course. A little bit goes a long way. Now I don't know if there's a better glue for this. There probably is. There likely is. But for me, this seemed to work okay. And you can see that I'm doing it in little sections, and so here I'm just going to start on those edges, and I take off the extra, because you can take this glue off if it goes into the clear part, but you don't want to have to. And since you're going to push this on and let it dry, you're going to probably have a little squeeze out. So here I line these up on those edges, and I've test fit this about 3 gazillion times just to make sure that they line up, and once they do, I just put a little pressure on there. And surprisingly, at least to me, that white glue, that tacky glue, actually stuck, and looks okay. And now I'm just making sure it's kind of straight, but I make sure that's on first, and I'm just test fitting those pieces to see that they actually, the flat perspex pieces, they're actually look like they're going to match up pretty well. Any parts that aren't perfectly matched will be okay, because I'm going to end up, painting this whole thing anyway in the end. I'm just checking to make sure it's fine, and now you just basically are now trying to add little bits of glue along those frames as best you can, and keep it as clean as you possibly can. And so far, nothing really squished out. So now I'm testing this and pushing it around. It seems to match on either end. So pretty excited at this point, because I didn't think it would be this simple. I really thought it was going to be crazy. And this is all in real time on purpose to show you how long it takes to do it, etc. But I'm surprised. I thought maybe I shouldn't have glued this as soon as I did. But it seemed to work okay. So here I go from the underneath, and I'm just carefully putting glue on all those frames that are going to touch the plastic. And again, the idea is, you can go back later and do a little touch-up, that's no problem. But the idea is to get this stuff stuck on there and give you this nice frame. And all paper models, when they've got glass and they've got framing, this is really how you have to do it. Now again, in terms of the kind of adhesive you use, I've tried using super glue. I've tried using this. Well, actually, this is one of the first times I use this. But the super glue dries to me too brittle, and it sort of falls apart. This stuff actually grips a little bit, which surprises me a bit, but it worked pretty well. And on places where it doesn't fit perfectly, or it doesn't glue perfectly, you can go back and add little bits and pieces, but you can see I'm carefully adding it, and then I take off excess. And then when you're ready, you just bring it down and just give it a little bit of pressure. And again, surprisingly, in my opinion, it didn't have much swish out. If it does, you can just take a little water or even your spit and wipe it off, and it comes off pretty well. Or you can even let it dry. It'll dry clear, and you either won't see it, or you can go back and sort of pick it off. But I was amazed that, like, around here, there's a real bulbous curve around that bottom piece on these windows, the canopy. And even with those, it rolled right around, grabbed, and stayed put, which I did not expect at all. I thought it was just going to take its time and spend most of its time coming up and not drying and not gluing. Went perfectly well. So I really was pleasantly surprised with this whole situation, because I didn't really think it would work quite that way. And here I'm finally adding the flat pieces down there, I think, trying to make sure they're going to get tight and put on there correctly. And when you do get some glue on there that's not supposed to be there, again, it's not the end of the world. You can get it off. So it's not something that means, oh, I've completely ruined the whole canopy. I mean, the worst comes to worst, you pull it off, you wash the canopy off and start over, and it would. I'm sure it would be okay, especially since it's got that future wax on there. So here I'm folding over those flat pieces, and again, these come together and fit and stick, and amazing that they were as good as they were. It worked out really, really well. So I'm just making sure that they're straight. Here I'm using a little bit of Smith spit there to clean up that glass, but it works. It works just fine. You don't need to go crazy with it. It's pretty good. So then I put a little glue on the other side and do the very same thing. And there you can see right there, some of that didn't glue right, or maybe I didn't put any glue on it. I think it just didn't glue quite right. So you just spend a little time going back and fixing some things. And then I tried something new that I'll tell you about in a couple seconds here that seemed to work really well to help keep this stuff all sort of, stuck down and kind of fused on and sort of encased, and it keeps it, I think anyway, so far it's keeping all those frames on really well, and it involves that floor wax. So making sure that's good, and then all of those canopy pieces are basically together, and now I'm just making sure that they are glued. And again, you go through and you see places that aren't quite right, so you go back and you squeeze them, or you add a little more glue. Sometimes I'll take an X-Acto blade, an old X-Acto blade, and I will put glue on that because it's flat, and it will fit under some of these pieces very delicately and carefully. You still got to have hands of a surgeon, though, because you don't want it to, again, you don't want to get a massive amount of glue on the clear parts. Yeah, here I use a little bit of this. You can't see it because I sped this up, but trust me, it's not that exciting. Once this is all together, though, there's that canopy part, and it looks pretty cool. And then these are the others you get to add on. You do the very same thing. This piece goes on. This is the part that has the antenna on it, and it will end up going on. And each of these pieces, by the way, I did pre-form with a little bit of curling like this. It's not exactly the right shape, but as long as it's curled a little bit, it'll help you. So this is going to go on in that location, and then you've got a little canopy part that goes around the pilot, and then you've got the front windscreen that goes on the very tippy tip of it. But here I'm checking, and again, I'm amazed that they're all lining up, and they line up at the base. So whoever made or designed the canopy and vac formed it did a good job. It fits perfectly well to the frames as stated. And again, in my case, there's a couple little places you look closely where the lines or things don't match up perfectly, and there's a little bit of clear, let's say, showing through. But I don't care, because again, what I'm going to end up doing is painting this stuff anyway, and those places will basically disappear. You won't even see them. Here I'm just kind of trying to show you that this is how it's going to go together, and you put them on just like I did that back piece. They all fit pretty well, and it's going to look great. So the interior I finally finished. Did a couple extra things I didn't show you, but they were just little things. One, there is, I think, a roll bar or something behind the pilot, and you can't hardly see it, but I put this thing on there. I assume it's a roll bar. It's a place to put armored glass. I also put a sight up front, because that's where my telescopic sight is going to drill in and go through there from the outside. That's going to be for the Canon. But it's all done, and it looks pretty good. I really like the interior. Looks pretty nice. I also put the front edging around, and I finished the front end and glued it in place. So that's in there. It's going to look pretty good again when it's all ferried in and glued, and I got some nice filler on it and some sanding. It's going to look fine. Now the canopy, what I did with the canopy was, once it was all done, I dipped it in floor wax again and let it dry. And here it is. So all the frames been put on, but I also dipped it a second time, and that sort of locked everything in place. In addition, I added, there's two little handles in there. I don't know if you can see them, but they're right near that front canopy where it would, the guy could open up. And then I put little square box and some wires near underneath where the antenna is going to go, just to make it look like there's some actual electricity on there. Make it look cool. And then I'm just going to end up sitting this on top and gluing it. That'll be the next thing. I'm going to basically mask off all those windows and then go ahead and try to glue this on, which will be our next installment. I wanted to get this out to show you, but so far, so good. Steady as she goes.